Okay. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah. My name is Adeel Zayab, and I'm going to be talking today. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulullah. We're talking today about the 10 keys to spiritual inner peace. Now, actually, this is, you actually need a whole like day or maybe weekend seminar to cover all of this. But we're going to do like a brief, because the time that was allotted, we'll do a brief kind of introduction to it, do some snippets. Um, so I've kind of noticed in my work as a Muslim chaplain, as a spiritual counselor, that um, one of the components that we are suffering with is inner peace. And when people's inner peace is not right, they cause a lot of harm, right? Because there's a notion that hurt people will hurt people, right? So, um, and some in times in life, there's lots of times where bad things happen to us. We go through difficulties and trials, and then that causes us to have some type of corrosion in our inner selves, right? Because of that suffering, we tend to hurt a lot more, right? So the first, I'm going to go over, inshallah, 10 secrets, right, to have better inner peace, right? The first one is to have a mind that is open to everything and that is attached to nothing, right? So if you go into a meeting, for example, and in this meeting you say, it's going to be very stressful, it's going to be very difficult, or if you have to wake up very early in the morning, like the other day I had a meeting and a work meeting, and I was up like late because it's Ramadan, up later at night and everything, right, and kind of doing all these things. So I had a dream, and I guess I was worried about missing this meeting, right? So in the dream, my alarm clock said the time of the meeting, like I missed it. Say the meeting was at like 8, right? So my alarm said 8:26 when I woke up, right? So then I was really stressed out about missing this meeting because my boss is very particular about meetings. So and then I woke up and the alarm said 8:26, like in real life. So I kind of envisioned myself missing it, and then I actually missed it, right? So the more patience you have, and the more you can kind of visualize that, okay, this is going to I'm going to do very well. Many of us, have children or have families, or have either elders, or have children or cousins or parents or grandparents, and sometimes these things become stressful, right? To deal with them. But if you go into them in the first place as, no, this is going to go very well, I'm happy to see them, they're going to be happy to see me, they're not stressful, they're a blessing from Allah, you will see how it all kind of changes, right? Many of the things we walk into is how we are going to, is how we walk into, how we view them, is how we benefit from them. Now, it's the month of Ramadan, so we're all fasting, right? Many of us are fasting, many of us cannot fast, and we pay the fidya and so on and so forth. But in this month, if you go into the month, if you exercise the month as in, oh, it's very difficult, it's very hard for me, I'm not going to be able to do X, Y, and Z, so on and so forth, then that's the result you're going to get. Does that make sense? Right? But if you walk in with it and saying, this is a training for me, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will help me become more close to Him, I'll become more pious, I'll become more patient, I'll become more charitable, I'll become more God conscious, I'll become more ethical and have better character with my family and friends, then that's inshallah what you will get out of it, right? Because if you go in there just like, I'm just gonna not have food and water, and this is how it's honestly been for me in the past, right? I would just be like, okay, like I'll do a little bit of X, Y, and Z worship, and the daytime I'll just waste time, like I'll watch cartoons, I'll do X, Y, and Z, but then you don't get the full benefit, right? If you go into Ramadan with, no, this is a training from Allah, I'm going to take it very seriously. And you start to implement Allah into all of your day, right? So if I go to the gym at night, alhamdulillah, and at night I listen to like nasheed, like not nasheed, like Islamic whatever songs, and while I'm working out, right? In the daytime, instead of watching my like TV shows or cartoons, I'm watching like Islamic related stuff, So, and then at work, I'm doing so. Whatever you can do to kind of make your Islam working as much as you're awake, inshallah, and then doing wudu at night, so that inshallah your sleep is also a worship. Make wudu before you sleep, and you say, "I intend to go to sleep so that I can rest for sake of Allah, so I can worship Allah later." Then your sleep becomes a worship, right? And to read Ayatul Kursi before you go to sleep as well, right? So too often we try to manipulate or mold people into what we want them to be. But if we accept them for for all of their beauty of Allah's creation, we will attain inner peace. Many times, we feel like, we want people, as I mentioned, like close relatives and family, right? We want them to become a certain way, right? I want my brother to be this way, my sister, my mother, my father, my wife, my children to be this in an X, Y, and Z way. If we are constantly doing that, we're never going to be happy. This is going to go against your inner peace because you're trying to mold them into something that you're not in charge of molding. Because who's molding them in the first place? Who's the one who created them in the first place? Allah, right? So Allah is the one who's given them the personality and these traits. So if you try to mold them into something they're not, it's going to go against, right, that fitrah, right? And it's going to go against your fitrah because that's not your job. Your job is to worship Allah, not to compete with Allah in terms of like trying to help mold this person and their character, right? The more you can build yourself to accept them and the beauty in that, because if you can imagine, if everybody is going to be an ideal, like if I say I want everyone to be like how I am or how I envision them to be, right? That's going to be a lot of chaos because you have to have people in their own ways who are good at their own things, right? Amr bin As was a um, very crafty in a good way companion. He was very intelligent, was able to kind of figure out schemes, right? Khalid was a great warrior. Bilal had a great voice, so different people had different strengths and different personality traits that helped them. Even with the Khulafa, with the caliphs of Islam, Omar was known to be was known to have a good balance of being firm and also having a genteel component about him. Abu Bakr cried a lot. Uthman was also very generous. Ali was a good, wise person. So you find how, and Aisha was also very intelligent and very empowered in her demeanor. So you see how the beauty, to have that inner peace, is to see, okay, I'm going to accept this person for who they are, and I'm also going to walk into every situation with as much positivity and good niyyah as possible. Okay. Now the second key is to not lose the party that's inside of you, right? Now, one of the scholars had said that, what is the worst they can do to me? What's the worst they can do to me? If they put me in prison, I'll make dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'll just remember Allah in prison. If they pick me out of my country, deport me, I'm on vacation, right? And if they kill me, I'll die shaheed, right? I'll die as a martyr, right? So whenever you walk into situations, understand that there really is no loss, right? That failure is actually a judgment. Um, uh, it's not really, it's an opinion. It's not a fact, right? You can't really judge that you actually lost in something because you don't know what the end outcome will be. Does that make sense, right? Because for example, say you have like a business and the business fails, right? Maybe if you opened that business, it would have consumed you, right? It would have taken up all your time. You would have invested in some haram activities, right? You would have neglected your family. At the end of your life, you would have regret this business. You should never had this business because now it takes you to the hellfire. Does that make sense? Right? So there's never really for a true believer, there's never really a failure. It is only a process that we are walking that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already ordained for us, and we are trying to, inshallah, get better at it. Now, the third secret is you can't give away what you don't have, right? Now, this is a very important component about energy. And it's a very big thing, in California about energy and da, da, da. But like, um, if there's low energy and there's high energies, you can say, right? So like a low energy is like anger, hate, shame, guilt, fear. And a high energy is like love, harmony, kindness, peace, joy. And people, you can't give what you don't have, and you will attract people with the same kind of energy that you are exuding. You know, so if you are someone who's very angry all the time, you'll find yourself attract people who have anger issues. If someone who's very kind and loving and harmonious, you'll find yourself attracting kinds of people, right? And the problem is that if you have these low energies around you, um, it will affect you more, and it'll create more and more negativity around you, right? And you can't necessarily fix every, like I mentioned, fix everybody around you, but you can choose, mm, at least to some extent, who you mix with, right? Because as a Muslim, it's important to see, like, who is my company, right? Are they Ahl Jannah, Ahl Nar? In terms of their like behavior and their demeanor, are they talking about, like, is their tongue attached to obscenities? Is there are they watching a lot of bad things? Are they hearing a lot of bad things? Are they acting on a lot of sin, or are they doing a lot of piety and good work? Right. So, what exactly is happening with the people that are around us in our inner circle that is affecting us too? Now, another example is, so is about having compassion, right? So if I don't have compassion to myself, I can't give that to anybody else. If I have hate, um, to myself, then I'll give it to somebody else. And I've noticed a lot of people, when you see somebody who's really judging hard on a sin, whatever sin it may be, it may be because they are struggling with that sin now, or they used to be struggling with that sin before. And then that person is doing it, so they project themselves upon that person. So they're harshest upon that person, right? So a key to that, a kind of remedy to that, is to think about, like, is to be mindful of what you're doing and why you're getting mad about it, right? And to say, okay, this person is doing this sin. I'm getting mad about this, but why am I getting so mad about this? What's my intention? What's my impetus, right? Is it because Allah hates this sin? Or is it because, and or is it because it's something that I used to do and I'm projecting myself, my own guilt onto this person, right? Um, Now the Prophet ﷺ, had taught us that none of you truly believes until you love for your brother or your sister, whatever it may be, until you love what you love for yourself. This is in Bukhari and Muslim, right? So to think about that is, one Dr. Matson had once taught us was that, the end of the hadith is showing that you have to show love for yourself, right? Because once you show love for yourself, you can show love to others, right? And how do you do that? Is one is you work on, you make your purpose of life. One is, of course, we know, to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And through that is to serve the creation, right? The more you do service to others, inshallah, the more you'll find yourself, your ego being humbled and being, kind of worked on. And then some of the scholars from the Ottoman kind of region, in Bosnia and so forth, they teach to treat your ego like ice, throw it in the water and let it dissolve. Because many of the problems we have is because of people's egos, right? It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. People have egos. It's what it is, and they'll kind of keep trying to block other people from doing good work and block themselves because it's kind of this idea. But if you can step back for a moment and say, okay, this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's the one who's actually controlling all the affairs. And my job is just to do good work, it'll help with that, inshallah. The fourth secret is to embrace silence, right? How many times we take time out of our day to just be silent, right? Didn't the Prophet ﷺ go to the cave of Hira and meditate there, right? So why aren't we meditating? Why aren't we taking a moment to reflect and to pause on our life? Whether it's with so many mountains here and where we live, you have oceans, right? You have the beaches here. You have hills, Chino Hills. So think about where you can go to have some seclusion and to think, right? You know who used to also do this? Muhammad Ali, rahmatullah alayhi, the boxer. He used to also, go, I think it's Deer Lake he used to go to, but he used to go and and he used to say, well, the prophets did this, so I'm going to go and do this too. Before he had like a big fight coming up, so he kind of go and train and kind of be there by himself and not have TV there, and kind of just focus on stuff, right? So how can we find ways to meditate, to journal, to put our life into perspective, right? Because otherwise the dunya will grab you, right? Allah says, Al-hakum takatha, the competition in worldly deeds diverts you, right? We get so uh, enveloped into this dunya that we don't take a moment to think and reflect, you know. Um, some of the higher spiritual, kind of counseling will teach us to, if we're doing some kind of a sin, so we're working on, maybe we have a bad habit of backbiting or cussing, using bad language, stuff like this. Say document it, write down, on a daily, like a nightly basis or whatever you have time. Write down, this happened, and then repent to Allah for that sin. And then on the weekend, review your week, and then monthly review the, and then and then quarterly, and then annually, kind of go on a retreat and look at your journal and say, okay, this is where I was, and this is where I've come so far. Kind of audit yourself, right? Your spirituality. Also, we mentioned the wilderness, right, being a good part of the therapy. Um, and then Allah also mentions how many times in the Quran to kind of look at the heavens, the stars, the moons, and all the examples He gives, right? Because it's very powerful when you see Allah's creation. It's humbling for you to kind of meditate and look at those things. And psychologists will mention that looking at wilderness is a kind of it's a therapy in itself, just to look at the beauty of the scenery. That's why people in California are generally happier than the people in America as well. Um, the fifth secret is to be a victim of your own personal history, right? This one's very hard. The wake of the boat. When you go on a boat, there's that kind of white waves in the back. You're on a boat, right? That's your past. Okay, that's your past. It has no effect on the boat moving forward, or on you on the boat right now. It's just the past, right? But the more we let our past affect us now, the more we are going to keep suffering, right? I'm not trying to make a jest or to minimize how difficult the past is for us. But I am saying is that if we let it continue to bother us, it will corrode us eventually. You know, um, one of the remedies here is to write down your past with a pencil and then rewrite how you look at it, right? Rewrite how you look at it. My father's dad died when my dad was about 6 years old. 6 years old. My dad's brother was about 7 years old. So 7 and 8, two boys, and my grandma and my grandpa. And my grandpa, rahmatullah alayh, he said um, on his deathbed, he said, I want one of my kids to become an engineer and one to become a doctor. That's like his kind of dying wish, so to speak. And so my dad's big brother became an engineer. So my dad effectively had to become a doctor to fulfill my grandfather's wish, right? And I think that for many years it bothered my father. And I could tell it really bothered him. It still bothers him today. But I told him, I said, Dad, you have to kind of, it's very sad what happened to your dad, and every kid wants their father to be involved in their life and to kind of help them grow and everything. Um, at the same time, you have a very beautiful story. You came from someone who used to, because your father passed away at 6 years old or so, you had to move around from gaon to gaon, from village to village in Pakistan, and live in someone else's home. And he would study on the kitchen floor, and ultimately he rose to become third in his medical school, mashallah, and then came to America, and and was able to kind of live a life, right, like a nice life, so to speak. Um, and that's a very courageous story. It's a very inspirational kind of American dream story, you know. So, and then he's like, he never saw his life like that. He always saw his life as the victim, right, as someone who's suffering, but never as someone who's offering inspiration, who conquered, who was resilient, and was like a role model his family, right? Now, there's a very powerful notion in Islam of embrace in the Surah Hadid, right, where Allah says, "No disaster strikes upon the earth or among yourselves, except that is written in a register before we bring it into being. Indeed, that for Allah is easy. In order that you do not despair over what has eluded you, and not exult in pride over what He has given you. And Allah does not like everyone self-deluded and boastful." Right? So Allah knows that we're going to reflect on the past, and it's going to be like, man, I wish I did this, I wish I did that, I wish this happened, I wish that happened, so on and so forth. But Allah says, no, no, this is written a long time ago. How did cheese? Everything was supposed to happen. It was supposed to happen the way it happened. You can't control everything. I'm the one in. He's saying I'm the one in control, really. If it was meant for you, it would have hit you. Otherwise, it wouldn't have hit you, right? And so it's at that moment where, if you can take a moment to think, okay, what is Allah Subhanahu wa Taala trying to teach me right now? What is the lesson that I'm learning? What is the training that I'm receiving right now? It's very difficult to get to that level, but it is possible, right? And the more you train yourself, the more successful you will be, inshallah. Now, the sixth key: you can't solve a problem with the same mind that's created it, right? Um, if you look at your relationships as being lousy, they will be lousy. You look at them with this, my relationship is great, it'll become great. If you see people, how many of you have seen Picasso's paintings? Any Picasso's seen right? Is it accurate? Is accurate depiction of someone? No, right? It's abstract and weird, right? It's a weird kind of a thing, right? But that's how Picasso thinks that person looks like to him, right? Um, that's also how we operate. We think people look like how we envision them. Everyone's their own painter. So if you paint someone in a horrible light, they will be a horrible person. If you paint them in a good way, they will be a good person. It's happened to me, man. I've had people, I'm just like, man, that person's so evil and wicked. I just can't, man, they just need a lot of help and da 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 da, da. And then I started to study this stuff a little bit more. And then I was like, okay, let me just refocus on this person again. What are their good traits? They're charitable. I mean, like they're not charitable. They do a lot of service to people, help out people out with counsel or other needs. Okay, they have a nice smile. They're a caring person. And then when I saw that person again, the person changed. It was unbelievable. Like the same person, nothing happened between me and this person. Like it's the same person. The same bad things I was thinking about. Nothing's like some big like kind of Malcolm X kind of change. Nothing like change like that. But it's the same person. But the way I looked at this person changed, and so then he changed, and then the way he looked back and changed. Makes sense, right? But you have to be in that mind state. Okay, look, now I'm gonna whatever the person is, because no one is going to have all the good traits, right? No one's going to be like a perfect and a model of everything all the time being good, right? But everybody has some good in them. And if you can focus on that good and bring that out, this person is like that, you will see the beauty in that. And Prophet ﷺ had mentioned, Al-Mu'min Mara'atul Mu'min. The believer is the mirror of the believer, right? So if you see good in the person, inshallah, that will see good back at you. If you see bad, you see the bad, and it's a big drama, right? Um, and there's this is kind of advanced, so it may be a little difficult to understand. Um, but there's three levels of consciousness, right? One level is ego level consciousness. That's like when I'm focusing primarily on me and my personality and my body. I want to become the number one heavyweight champion of the world in boxing. This is my kind of ego level, right? The group level is that um, my people are the best people, right? Kashmiri people are the best people. African Americans are the best people. Mexicans are the best people. Japanese best people, so on and so forth. Right? Men, women, whatever else. Then there's a mystical level consciousness where you find that everyone is connected in some way, and harm will come in that connection. Right? So if I destroy wildlife, I'm actually harming myself in a way, right? If and we know the Prophet ﷺ was sent as a rahmah to who? To who? Alamin, right? Humanity, universe, mankind, jinn, stars, whatever else, right? So it wasn't just the Muslimin, right? Or mu'mineen, or it was alamin, right? So you have to understand that you're connected to everything, has an effect. And Allah says in 11 Surah 50th ayah, and to Ad we sent their brother Hud, right? Now, Hud was a believer. People of Ad were not believers, right? But Allah still calls them brother. You see? So the notion of kind of brother in humanity, right? The seventh key is no justified resentments. Okay. Now, this also is very difficult, and there's lots of complexity in this. People go through a lot of serious traumas, like rape and sexual assault and murders, and all of these things happen. But it's important that a way to kind of move on or to conquer that in any way to offer some kind of peace in that, I should say, is to understand that if you can forgive that person and move forward, you yourself will be suffering less, right? This is very, very important. Very, very important to understand. There's a Chinese proverb: if you're going to pursue revenge, you better dig two graves, right? Because you'll spend your life, um, that person will occupy your mind without paying rent in your mind, right? It consumes us, and then that person is living their life and not even, kind of uh, changing from it, right? Um, um, there was a there was once a sage, and he asked his students, he said, if someone offers you a gift and you don't accept the gift, whom does the gift belong, right? And then to ask yourself, why would I allow something that belongs to someone else to be a source of my resentment, right? So it's really their issue and their problem they're projecting on you. A lot of times you see kids, like bullies who are bullying kids. The bully himself or herself was bullied, and they're bullying the kid now, and they're passing on that kind of cycle of bullying to people, right? Um, and it's important to be aware of this. It's not just children; it happens to adults, right? Unfortunately, in a lot of our cultures, you'll have like the mother-in-laws will be abusive to the daughter-in-laws, and the daughter-in-laws become mother-in-laws. They become abusive to their new daughter-in-laws. It becomes a vicious cycle, right? And that's a big problem. And you also find with men who are abusive to their like surroundings, to their wife or to their children, and their children become abusive. And so it's very, very important to be aware that this is a vicious cycle and to kind of cut it off. And it's not how it's going to be um, from this point. Um, Now, a lot of times we get into conflicts with people, right? We get passionate. Politics happen, religion, family issues. We get very passionate about them. An easy way to end the debate, or it's like it's a friendly debate. Something gets out of hand. Has ever happened to any of you? Out of hand debates or arguments, right, about some kind of topic? When that happens, just saying you're right, it can just dissolve everything. Or if you say that's a valid point, right? Right? Or I can see where you're going with that. If you say this, I mean, you'll save so much heartache and headache and pain and gray hairs and wrinkles and dramas, right? If you just say you are right, it's a very valid point, or I never thought of that before, and then the person will just kind of disarm. But the more you go, the more they'll go. The more you go, the more, and they'll keep going on and on and on and on and on, right? Um, so it's very important to try to not practice judgment and try to see how can I make this situation a little bit easier. Um, Forgiveness has is the final word on forgiveness, right? It has two reasons: to let the others know that you no longer wish to be in a state of hostility with that person, right? And to free yourself from the self-defeating energy of resentment. It's like venom that's far worse and longer than the bite, because the bite hits you for a second, but venom kind of goes through the body, right, and kind of destroys the person, right? And some ways you can do this is you send love to someone who has wronged you. You know, you send them some kind of a man. If you want to melt somebody, you do that. You know, there was a basketball player, Shaquille O'Neal. Do you remember this basketball player? He's very big, mashallah. And there was another player called Yao Ming. Remember Yao Ming? He was Chinese, right? And so Shaq was the big player, and Yao Ming came, and it was a big to do about Yao Ming. So I think Shaq was a little bit jealous of like this kind of passing of the torch, and so he said something like, "Tell Yao Ming," and then he gave some kind of like racist Chinese like words. You he was saying it wasn't anything real, but he was trying to sound like he was speaking Chinese in like a derogatory way. So Yao Ming sent Shaquille O'Neal a Christmas card as a response. What could Shaq do at that point? He said, no one ever sent me a Christmas card before in my life. You see? He could have hit him right back with something, but he said, no, he's like this, right? Then you become the master of that person, right? In a way. They can't say anything at that point. So fifth key, treat yourself as if you're already what you like to be, right? We talked about in the khutbah the other day, and some of you were there, about the story of Hind and Muhammad sallallahu, right? And how they kind of kept going um, back and forth, and they kind of, at how they felt about each other, and ultimately, they really loved one another and each other's families very much. Um, but to treat yourself as if you're already what you'd like to be, right? If you're trying to be a doctor, I tell my students who want to go to medical school, I tell them, imagine yourself as already a doctor as you are studying to become a doctor. You visualize yourself that you're going to get there. Similarly, in terms of akhirah, in terms of your next life, imagine yourself as Ahlul Jannah, right? Put yourself as I'm going to be going into paradise. Hawi's in his book Aqidah, he says that the believer should be someone who has firm conviction that if I do good deeds and I have faith, I will go to Jannah. This is like where my destination is. If you act the part, inshallah, you'll get the part, right? Imagine if I said I want to become the heavyweight champion of the world, but I'm eating in and out. I'm sitting there watching TV all day. I never do any kind of workout. It's not gonna work, right? So this is again what Muhammad Ali did. He said he watched Muhammad, one of the champions. I can't remember which one it was before him, and he heard the announcer say XYZ heavyweight champion of the world, and then he said Cassius Clay heavyweight champion of the world. It sounds great. Like I want to do that. Start envisioning yourself, inshallah, you'll get there. And this we talk about the story. I think I mentioned it in the khutbah about Amr bin As when with the Prophet ﷺ, and Prophet ﷺ saw the man entering into the masjid, and he had his sandals kind of wet from like wudu, whatever, and he said, "That's a person from Jannah." You know the story, right? And then Amr was very kind of intrigued. He said, "Okay, how is this person from Jannah? I want to find out what's the situation." So he goes to this person and he says, "Hey, uh, my dad and I are having some issues right now. So can I stay with you for a few nights?" And so he stays with him for a few nights to kind of figure out what makes him feel special he's from Jannah, right? Because Prophet says something like that, it's a big deal. So he goes and stays nights for a few nights with him. And so, it's like say the time to fast, like it's a fasting day, so to speak. And Amr sees the person's not fasting, he's eating. Not like a Ramadan day, but on a regular day, right? Okay, well, he's not fasting. Then, like, it's time for the Qiyām like late night prayers and stuff, and the guy is sleeping. He's not praying at night. He's not fasting extra. Like, what's going on, right? So he goes to the person. He says, "Hey, I'm sorry. I didn't tell you the truth. My dad and I are fine. I just came here. The Prophet said that you were from Jannah, like you're a person of Jannah. So, but you don't like pray extra. You don't fast. Like, what's your deal? Like, I don't understand." And he said, "Yeah, yeah. I don't know what it is." And he said, "Wait a minute. There is one thing. I go to sleep at night. I don't hold resentment in my heart towards anyone." Right? Then Amma responded and said, "That's what makes you better than us, and that's what we can't do." Right? Sorry about that. So that's very, very important. Is Amir's kind of quest to how can I become a person of Jannah? So if you imagine yourself now, I'm going to be a good Muslim. I'm going to be a practicing Muslim. I'm going to have sincere intention to Allah. I will see Allah, inshallah, in the next life. I'll be in cover and judgment, and so on and so forth. Then, inshallah, Allah will give that to you. Ask Allah for that, I'll give it to you. But if you kind of say, I'm sinning, I'm going to hell anyway, da, 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 then you're going to keep, you know what I mean? You get what you kind of aspire for, in a way. Um, the ninth secret is to remember the connectivity of Allah, right? Um, remember that you are connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the only way we can find peace in our hearts is to remember Allah. Okay? Allah says, those who have believed and whose hearts are assured by the remembrance of Allah. Unquestioned by the remembrance of Allah, hearts are assured. So if you want to have a peace of mind, a peace of your soul, remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This will help you in so many things in your life, right? And one beautiful component of our religion is that there's so much minutia that is highlighted in Islam that helps us feel better about our lives. The Prophet said, like, even if you get like pricked by like a thorn on your foot, and you're patient with that, that can be a release of your sins, right? I mean, so I'm stuck, like my back is hurting and my sins are forgiven. That's like amazing, like who would think of it like that? Like, so anything that happens in your life, like think of it as, how can I take this, become closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because I'm for sure connected to Him in your business dealings, in your family dealings, and it's not a problem to uh, we're going to all the time have issues in our relationships. It's going to happen no matter what it is. But you can always, inshallah, at least try your best to mend those relationships. And sometimes if they can't do that, then that's on them. And the final key, because I think time is running out now, inshallah. The final key is the 10th key. Is the is avoiding all thoughts that weaken you, right? Um, every thought computes to either weaken you or strengthen you, right? Power urges you to form and live at the highest level. Um, negative forces weaken you, obviously positive forces strengthen you, right? Have you ever thought about how you feel when you feel ashamed or you feel humiliated, right? Do you have high energy or low energy at that point? Pretty low, right? It's pretty low, right? Um, fear, anger, resentment, all these things you feel low. If you're happy or elated or excited, you feel the energy kind of rushing, positive excitement, you know. And that's what you should kind of focus on, is how can I get myself into a high level of energy, right? Positively think about something. Sometimes, like, you'll find yourself, I think, sick, right? And then you get sick. Has it ever happened to you before? Like, I'm getting sick, and you start thinking about getting sick, and then you get sick. It's so weird. It happens. I'm driving, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna try this out. Okay, so I'm making dua, thinking about I'm gonna have to find a parking spot at work. And you find a parking spot. It's like a miracle. Subhanallah. The more you think about things and act in a positive way and make dua, inshallah, Allah will find ways, right? And there is a hadith Qudsi. The Prophet ﷺ mentions that our Lord descends to the heaven on the last third of every night. And he says, "Who is calling upon me that I may answer him? Who is asking from me that I may give him? Who is seeking my forgiveness that I may forgive him?" Right? It's in Sahih Bukhari. Agreed upon. Muttafaq alayh, right? So it's one of the secrets um, of success in this life and the next life that you get both is tahajjud, right? Is tahajjud. My grandma that I mentioned earlier, that whose husband passed away, my father's mother, she prayed tahajjud I think every night of her life, you know. And if you think about like what are the odds, like what are the odds of a woman who is from the village in Pakistan with very low level education, right? And two boys. What are the odds that she would end up in the most powerful country in the world? Eating, like whatever she wants to eat, living in a nice home, a nice bed, with good medical care. Like, what are the odds of that happening, right? But every night she prayed tahajjud to Allah. Make sure she got her namazes. Make sure she was raising her boys well. She was harsh with them, but she had to be harsh. She was one woman with two boys, right? So um, it's very, very important to the secret. And if you find yourself doing this on a consistent basis, tahajjud, you'll find your dunya becomes good too. Not just the idea of, oh, akhir, I gotta wait like 50 years, 80 years, da, 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 da. But it's like you find your dunya becomes easier if you do it on a consistent basis. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept our prayers, our fast, all of the efforts that we're doing in this month of Ramadan, to help us to purify our intentions, to come closer to Him, to find ways to leave the sins that we are doing, and to purify our hearts and to enter the highest level of paradise. Wassalamu ala muslim, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. Barakallahu feekum.
استقيم. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. ألف لام ميم تنزيل الكتاب لا ريب فيه من رب العالمين. أم يقولون افتراه بل هو الحق من ربك لتنذر قوما ما أتاهم من نذير من قبلك لعلهم يهتدون. الله الذي خلق السماوات والأرض وما بينهما في 6 أيام ثم استوى على العرش ما لكم من دونه من ولي ولا شفيع أفلا تتذكرون يدبر الأمر من السماء إلى الأرض ثم يعرج إليه في يوم كان مقداره 1000 سنة مما تعدون ذلك عالم الغيب والشهادة العزيز الرحيم الذي أحسن كل شيء خلقه وبدأ خلق الإنسان من طين ثم جعل نسله من سلالة من ماء مهين ثم سواه ونفخ فيه من روحه وجعل لكم السمع والأبصار والأفئدة قليلا ما تشكرون وقالوا أإذا ضللنا في الأرض أإنا لفي خلق جديد بل هم بلقاء ربهم كافرون قل يتوفاكم ملك الموت الذي وكل بكم ثم إلى ربكم ترجعون ولو ترى إذ المجرمون ناكسوا رؤوسهم عند ربهم ربنا أبصرنا وسمعنا فارجعنا نعمل صالحا إنا موقنون ولو شئنا لأتينا كل نفس هداها ولكن حق القول مني لأملأن جهنم من الجنة والناس أجمعين فذوقوا بما نسيتم لقاء يومكم هذا إنا نسيناكم وذوقوا عذاب الخلد بما كنتم تعملون إنما يؤمن بآياتنا الذين ذكروا بها خروا سجدا ويسبحون بحمد ربهم وهم لا يستكبرون الله أكبر الله أكبر تتجافى جنوبهم عن المضاجع يدعون ربهم خوفا وطمعا ومما رزقناهم ينفقون فلا تعلم نفس ما أخفي لهم من قرة أعين جزاء بما كانوا يعملون أفمن كان مؤمنا كمن كان فاسقا لا يستوون أما الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات فلهم جنات المأوى نزلا بما كانوا يعملون وأما الذين فسقوا فمأواهم النار كلما أرادوا أن يخرجوا منها أعيدوا فيها وقيل لهم ذوقوا عذاب النار الذي كنتم به تكذبون. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم ملك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. ولنذيقنهم من العذاب الأدنى دون العذاب الأكبر لعلهم يرجعون. ومن أظلم ممن ذكر بآيات ربه وهو أعرض عنها إنا من المجرمين منتقمون. ولقد آتينا موسى الكتاب فلا تكن في مرية من لقائه وجعلناه هدى لبني إسرائيل وجعلنا منهم أئمة يهدون بأمرنا لما صبروا وكانوا بآياتنا يوقنون. إن ربك هو يفصل بينهم يوم القيامة فيما كانوا فيه يختلفون. أولم يهدي لهم كم أهلكنا من قبلهم من القرون يمشون في مساكنهم إن في ذلك لآيات أفلا يسمعون. أولم يروا أنا نسوق الماء إلى الأرض الجرز فنخرج به زرعا تأكل منه أنعامهم وأنفسهم أفلا يبصرون. ويقولون متى هذا الفتح إن كنتم صادقين. قل يوم الفتح لن ينفع الذين كفروا إيمانهم ولا هم ينذرون. فأعرض عنهم وانتظر إنهم منتظرون. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. I'm going to pray two more. It's up to you guys. You don't have to if you're tired. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. سأل سائل بعذاب واقع للكافرين ليس له دافع من الله ذي المعارج تعرج الملائكة والروح إليه في يوم كان مقداره 50,000 سنة فاصبر صبرا جميلا إنهم يرونه بعيدا ونراه قريبا يوم تكون السماء كالمهل وتكون الجبال كالعهن ولا يسأل حميما حميما يبصرونهم يود المجرم لو يفتدي من عذاب يومئذ ببنيه وصاحبته وأخيه وفصيلته التي تؤويه ومن في الأرض جميعا ثم ينجيه كلا إنها لظى نزاعة للشوى تدعو من أدبر وتولى وجمع فأوعى إن الإنسان خلق هلوعا إذا مسه الشر جزوعا وإذا مسه الخير منوعا إلا المصلين الذين هم على صلاتهم دائمون والذين في أموالهم حق معلوم للسائل والمحروم والذين يصدقون بيوم الدين والذين هم من عذاب ربهم مشفقون إن عذاب ربهم غير مأمون والذين هم لفروجهم حافظون إلا على أزواجهم أو ما ملكت أيمانهم فإنهم هم غير ملومين فمن ابتغى وراء ذلك فأولئك هم العادون والذين هم لأمانتهم وعهدهم راعون والذين هم بشهادتهم قائمون والذين هم على صلاتهم يحافظون أولئك في جنات مكرمون الله أكبر سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم ملك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين فما للذين كفروا قبلك مهطعين عن اليمين وعن الشمال عزين أيطمع كل امرئ منهم أن يدخل جنة نعيم كلا إنا خلقناهم مما يعلمون فلا أقسم برب المشارق والمغارب إنا لقادرون على أن نبدل خيرا منهم وما نحن بمسبوقين فذرهم يخوضوا ويلعبوا حتى يلاقوا يومهم الذي يوعدون يوم يخرجون من الأجداث سراعا كأنهم إلى نصب يوفضون خاشعة أبصارهم ترهقهم ذلة ذلكم اليوم الذي كانوا يوعدون الله أكبر سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان الله. الله أكبر. تحيات. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. Allah Ta'ala accept your ibadah, inshallah.
I think you should get the coin so you can get some rest.
Inshallah. It's true, I don't have a self-driving car. I need a self-driving truck.
That's the next project.
I know, man.
Self-driving Tesla.
Tesla better make a pickup truck, man.
Thank you, Ryan.
Alhamdulillah, thank you. Inshallah. All right, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum. Alaikum salam. Inshallah, get some rest. Yeah. All right, inshallah, get some rest. You know what?
Assalamu alaikum.